Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I saw that this petition that had gone up, and I can't remember the actual name of it. Let me find the original petition. But the original petition was basically something like, we want no more new pharmacy school accreditation until 2030. So they asked for one thing. But now they've passed their goal of 15,000 signing this, so they, of course, go to 25,000 to sign it. But the people that signed it didn't sign on to the original, signed on to the original petition, but now there's these other demands, and it's now you're saying, well, the people that signed count for these new things that we want. And I don't even know who these guys are. I know it's hashtag ChangePharmacy, but I'm not sure who the actual people are. But I wanted to kind of go through some of these. Let me go through all of them. It's pretty quick, and I'm just going to give you kind of my thought on them. So, establish an accreditation reform task force. So, the first thing is that accreditation is kind of an archaic thing, and these requests in many ways are simply impossible. But I understand what they're saying, and I think instead of saying you can't do that or you can do that, which is unfortunately what the response kind of came off as, and it's kind of like an email when you write back to, when somebody's mad and sends you an email, you call them. You don't email back, because that just creates this thread, which is what's happened here, where people are just mad. And so I'm going to write you a mad letter, and I'm going to write you a letter that I'm madder. But let me just go over these and kind of give some perspective to them, rather than saying, no, you can't do that or you can do that. Establish new enforceable and measurable metrics to accreditation standards. So those metrics are the way that it's set up now. Let me just give you an example. They don't even tell any school that they have to do these classes before they get into pharmacy school. They just basically say they should be good in the sciences and be able to write and all of those things. That's why we have, as many different pre-pharmacy requirements, though I don't know a school that doesn't require organic. But what they're saying is, okay, well, say that somebody has to have a certain GPA or something like that. I think that's where they're going with that. But the way the accreditation document's written, there's no way to put metrics on it. Accreditation standards to reject satellite pharmacy schools. I think I understand where this is coming from. This is coming from the thought that, well, it wasn't the new schools didn't really get a ton of students. They just kind of sapped a little bit from each school, and each time they did it, some of the schools just allowed more people in, and some of them had a satellite. Maryland, for example, had a satellite in Shady Grove, which is in my hometown in Montgomery County in Maryland. And they just shut it down last year. Well, I don't think they shut it down. They accepted their last class for that, and then now everybody's at the mothership. So the quick workaround to this is, well, just bring everybody back to the mothership. But I think those satellite pharmacy schools are a better way to expand the profession, in that you're reaching other areas of the state that are underserved. And that's always how it's been with medical schools. If you want to go to Southern Cal, then you go to this beautiful, beautiful campus. I was there, I want to say a year ago or 2 years ago for a writers conference. But if you go to Southern Cal Medical School, you are in Watts. So it's not that, I understand what they're saying, which is you've built satellite schools which add more students. But I think the satellite schools were actually serving a population that was underserved. So again, I don't know how that would work out. Reject distance learning programs. Well, almost every profession except ours has put in law, as you saw in the recent article I just posted about, but accreditation standards to reject distance learning programs, you can't really. Distance is where it's at now. This is where creates a lot of, gets rid of some of the repetition. It allows people that normally couldn't get to a school. Now, when you charge someone more for a distance learning program than you do for a regular program, that's a different story. And I know some schools do that. Why do you pay full year-round tuition for your fourth year of pharmacy school if you're in a distance learning program and then you've never sat on campus? I don't know. Accreditation standards require NAPLEX pass rates above 80% to maintain accreditation status. Then they would just be teaching to the test, and that ends up being an even worse thing. The accreditation standards are not meant to help students pass the NAPLEX. They're supposed to help maintain a level of standard of the school so that they put out people that are practice ready. And that 80%, I don't know where they got it from. It's kind of an arbitrary number. Why not 85%? Why not 90%? Whatever it is. I think they're just looking for a reasonable number. But I think where the anger or upsetness comes from is I think a school was around 50% or a little higher than 50%, and there was no accreditation status change. And I don't know if they know how accreditation works, in that it takes almost a full year's cycle to get to deal with that, because all the people that are doing the accreditation visits are volunteers, as far as I know. Halt accepting new accreditation applications until the new standards are installed. Yeah, again, they already said that wasn't legal, but I get what they're saying. We don't want to have people in this interim. Appoint a #ChangePharmacy member to the task force. Yeah, I don't know who they are, but okay. Establish a pharmacist first task force. So maximum prescription to pharmacist ratio. There are a lot of reasons why this could or couldn't work. What you would end up doing is creating a situation where you've made it better to automate what a pharmacist does. And same thing for the prescription to technician ratio. So something that most people haven't talked about and probably wouldn't talk about is that by pushing the salaries of pharmacists down, what you're actually doing is extending the length of time that pharmacists will be continuing to dispense, because the less expensive they are, the less technology kind of takes over, and then the other way around. Lunch break for every 6 hours work. There's a lot of reasons why that's a little bit tough to do. And no waivers allowed, so I'm sure somebody ran into something. Reject pharmacy performance metrics that interfere with patient care and education. I get where that's coming from. That's just saying, look, we're having to do a certain number of flu shots, and I don't have time to eat, or I don't have time to, pump if you're somebody who just had a child, and there are a lot of things that are happening, and I know the metrics are not popular. Support a minimum starting pharmacy technician wage at $15 an hour. So again, this is kind of, that would be like saying, so I guess what doesn't make sense here is that if you have a minimum starting pharmacy technician wage, why wouldn't you have a minimum starting pharmacist wage? If you felt that pharmacists are, in bad shape, then you should put one for them too. And many states are doing something like this, but I get where this is coming from, that pharmacy technicians, and they are leaving en masse to go to other jobs that are less stressful, that pay more. This is the best economy in 40 years in terms of getting a job. So that would actually help the profession quite a bit if pharmacy technicians made a lot more. Support increasing patient education time and pharmacy workflow. This one is where you're assuming that, okay, well, if I have more time to educate the patient, they're going to be more educated. But as a parent who just went and got a bunch of stuff I went and got prescriptions for everyone in the family but me yesterday. And that patient education time, it's really more about making appointments with patients, because I was having none of it when it took, half an hour to get in to just get the medicine itself, find out that one of them wasn't ready, even though I got texted that, they were. And then, I went back and same deal where, I came in, said, okay, well, I need it. And then I came back an hour later and they hadn't put it into the workflow for waiters rather than non-waiters. And I know that they're understaffed, so I understand, and I just kind of dealt with it. But I think what they're really asking is, hey, can we get more one-on-one time with the patients where we're not dealing with all these other things? And then I don't know who, there's another appointed ChangePharmacy member to the task force. Again, I don't know who they are. Establish a pharmacy responsibility and opportunity plan. College deans to pledge to reduce class sizes by 10%. That's an arbitrary number. It would affect a college that puts out 600 students a year much differently than it would affect a class, someone that puts out 100 students a year. But I can assure you this is already happening. You've already got this one met. The applications are down 20%. I already know from talking to, because I'm one of the very few people on the pre-pharmacy side that watches this stuff. And I have students that were very interested in pharmacy. At some point, they run into something like this, and they're like, no way, man, ain't going to happen to me. And it's kind of disappointing because it's like, there are good reasons to go, and it might have been better for them to go. But pledge to reduce class sizes by 10%. That's already going to happen. This next class is going to be one of the smallest that we've had in a decade. Pharmacy schools are absolutely getting battered this year, and there's something called MELT, where somebody accepted an admission, and they're not going to take it coming into fall. They're just not going to show up. Conduct an annual pharmacy labor forecast for public reference. So this is there is that one at pharmacyworkforce.com. But what you really want to know is how many people after residency are getting jobs that they want, and how much are they making in those jobs, and are they full-time and things like that. But the obligation, as the government puts it, is when they graduate from their school, they just have to get a job or do residency. So that's kind of met because of the number of residencies that are there. Address instability in training and labor opportunities. Obviously, this should have been the first one. This is where all this is coming from, where there's just not the opportunities that we had before. But that's the thing, is that it's not like the big chains aren't hiring. They're just hiring nurse practitioners because we didn't get provider status. If we had provider status, we wouldn't be having this discussion at all, I don't think. Well, it takes a while for things like that to happen. Identify and implement strategies to reduce rising student debt burden. Amen. I feel for you. I just went and looked back just for fun to see how much I paid for college. Well, my parents paid. But my tuition was, I think it worked out to be about $4,000 for 3 years of undergrad. That's 3 years total. And then $16,000 for pharmacy school. So I paid $20,000 for 7 years of college, and I got an AA and a doctorate, and I was a year from getting a bachelor's, and I ended up getting that later. So I definitely think the YFP team is doing a great job with this to kind of help. It's not just student debt. There's a lot of other things going on with that, especially with interest rates. So anyway, so this whole new blueprint is their initial effort. And I think the most important thing to do is to not say you're right, you're wrong, these points absolutely are a no-go, this one can go, and things like that. I think the most important thing to see is that, okay, we've got 15,000 angry people in some way tied to pharmacy. And if the pharmacy group, and I'm only using a round number to make it a lot easier for me, is 300,000, that means that you have a 5% portion of that entire group saying, hey, we're mad. And I think that that's what it does. I don't think it says we agree with all your points and all this stuff. But I think that those organizations should write a one-line letter. Let's sit down and talk, or call us, or let's call you. But please, I really hope they don't write back. Because what happened was there was an angry email or dismissive email went back. And then now here's angry email again saying, okay, well, not only are we angry, we're going to get another 10,000 people to show you that we're serious about this. So I hope you check it out. I'll put the note in there. It's interesting. But again, I think we need to stop looking at, okay, I'm mad about this and this and this and this, and just escalating the argument and just saying, all right, well, we've got a lot of mad people, and it's time to sit down and talk about it. And I'd like to know who these people are. That'd be interesting, because it's contact us at team.changepharmacy.org. Is there like an about page? There's a volunteer, but I don't see any actual people. So I don't know. All right, let me know what you think in the comments.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.